There are moments between Heughan and Caitríona Balfe that feel almost too real to be scripted, and that's where the questions begin. For years, fans have watched their connection unfold on screen with a level of intensity that blurs the line between performance and something deeper. It's not just the dialogue or the scenes themselves, but the way they look at each other, the pauses, the unspoken reactions that feel impossible to fake. And over time, those moments have built a question that refuses to go away. What if this was never just acting? From the very beginning of Outlander, their chemistry stood out as something different. Not exaggerated, not overly dramatic, but grounded in a way that made it believable, almost personal. Interviews only added to that perception, showing a dynamic that felt natural, comfortable, and effortlessly in sync. They laughed easily, responded to each other without hesitation, and carried a kind of shared understanding that didn't need explanation. But what made things more complicated was the consistency of those moments outside the show. It wasn't limited to scenes or scripted interactions, it appeared in behind-the-scenes clips, press tours, and casual conversations. Small gestures, quick glances, reactions that seemed to come before words, these were the details that fans began to notice. And once noticed, they were impossible to ignore. Over time, these fragments started to form a pattern, one that felt too consistent to dismiss as coincidence. There were interviews where one would begin to speak and the other would instinctively respond, moments where laughter felt less like performance and more like familiarity. Even in situations where questions became more personal, there was a subtle shift in how they handled them, deflecting, redirecting, but never fully disconnecting. It created a space where something felt present, but never confirmed. That's where the tension begins. Because every time the question is asked, whether directly or indirectly, the answer remains the same: they are just friends, just co-stars, just collaborators. And yet, the way they say it often feels softer than the words themselves, as if the statement exists to define a boundary rather than explain a reality. That contrast is what keeps the speculation alive. Fans have pointed to specific moments that seem to sit just outside that explanation. A look that lingers a second too long, a reaction that feels too immediate, a silence that carries more weight than what's being said. None of these moments are definitive on their own, but together, they create a narrative that feels almost complete. Almost, but not quite. Then there's the question of time. Relationships, whether romantic or not, change over years, especially when two people work as closely as Sam and Caitríona have. Spending that much time together, sharing emotional scenes, building trust both on and off screen, it creates a connection that doesn't easily fit into simple categories. And when that connection is visible, even in small ways, it naturally leads people to wonder if it has crossed into something more. What makes this even more intriguing is how carefully the possibility is managed. Neither of them has ever allowed the narrative to move beyond what they are willing to confirm. They maintain a balance, close enough to feel real, distant enough to remain undefined. And that balance has remained consistent, even as the speculation has grown louder over the years. At the same time, the idea that something might be there continues to resurface, especially when new moments are added to the pattern. A new interview, a new clip, a new interaction, each one adds another layer, another piece that seems to support the same question. And while none of it provides a clear answer, it strengthens the feeling that there is more to the story than what is openly shared. Now, after years of watching, analyzing, and questioning, fans find themselves in a familiar place. Not with proof, not with confirmation, but with a story that feels just believable enough to hold on to. A connection that exists somewhere between friendship and something more, never fully defined, but never fully dismissed. And the more those moments continue to appear, the harder it becomes to see them as just coincidence. Because when something feels this consistent, this natural, this real, the question starts to shift. Not whether there's something there, but whether it was ever meant to be seen at all. As the speculation deepens, the story begins to shift from what people see to how those moments are interpreted. Because while the connection between Heughan and Caitríona Balfe feels undeniable to many, the meaning behind it remains far less certain. Is it a rare kind of professional chemistry that simply appears more intimate than usual, or something that exists just beyond what they're willing to define publicly? That uncertainty is what keeps the conversation alive. Some fans argue that what they are witnessing is not romance, but the result of years of trust and collaboration. Acting at that level, especially in emotionally intense roles, requires a kind of openness that can easily be mistaken for something personal. When two people spend so much time building a shared emotional language, it naturally creates moments that feel real, even outside of the script. And in that sense, what audiences are responding to may not be love, but the authenticity of that connection. Others, however, see it differently. They believe that while the foundation may be professional, something more could have developed over time, something subtle, something unspoken, but present nonetheless. Not necessarily a traditional relationship, not something public or defined, but a connection that exists quietly beneath the surface. And because it's never acknowledged, it becomes even more compelling, almost like a story that is unfolding without being told. What complicates this further is the way both Sam and Caitríona handle the narrative. They never dismiss each other, never create distance in a way that feels forced, but they also never confirm anything beyond friendship. Their responses remain consistent, but their interactions leave just enough room for interpretation. And that balance, intentional or not, keeps the line between reality and perception blurred. There's also the influence of expectation, something that often shapes how people interpret what they see. Fans who have invested in the idea of a deeper connection may naturally view certain moments as confirmation, while others may see the same moments as coincidence or professional instinct. And because there is no definitive answer, both perspectives can exist at the same time, each supported by the same set of observations. In many ways, the story has become less about them and more about the space around them, the gap between what is shown and what is assumed. It's in that space that theories form, where small details take on larger meaning, where a glance or a pause can be interpreted in multiple ways. And once that process begins, it becomes almost impossible to separate observation from interpretation. At the same time, there is a possibility that the truth doesn't fit neatly into either side of the argument. That what exists between them is neither purely professional nor traditionally romantic, but something more complex, shaped by time, experience, and shared understanding. A connection that doesn't need to be defined in order to exist, and perhaps can't be easily explained even if it were. What makes this narrative so enduring is that it resists resolution. There is no clear moment where everything is revealed, no statement that settles the question once and for all. Instead, it continues to evolve with every new interaction, every new clip, every new interpretation. And in that constant movement, the mystery remains intact. Because in the end, the question isn't just whether friendship turned into love. It's whether what people are seeing needs to be labeled at all. Whether the connection that feels so real to so many is meant to be understood in traditional terms, or simply accepted as something that exists in its own way. And until that question is answered, if it ever is, the story will continue, not as a confirmed truth, but as a possibility that refuses to fade. Because in the end, the question isn't just whether friendship turned into love. It's whether what people are seeing needs to be labeled at all. Whether the connection that feels so real to so many is meant to be understood in traditional terms, or simply accepted as something that exists in its own way. And until that question is answered, if it ever is, the story will continue, not as a confirmed truth, but as a possibility that refuses to fade. Because in the end, the question isn't just whether friendship turned into love. It's whether what people are seeing needs to be labeled at all. Whether